and today we're going to be talking about rhyming while I prep some canvases for work. This water bottle here. So I am using, to prep my canvases and my boards, this golden gloss medium. Now you can also use a matte medium. It just depends on what finish you want. But basically, because I'm doing mixed media work, pretty much my entire surface will be covered anyway. So it doesn't really matter. I just happen to have more gloss medium than I do matte medium, so that's why I chose this in particular. Um, so this canvas comes pre-gessoed, so there's already a coating on it. But why I like to use the gloss medium is because it it gives a better seal than just the gesso does itself, and it stops the impurities that might be in the paint and in the canvas or the wood from seeping through. Oops, this has a whole bunch of stuff left over. And I put it in this container just because it's easier for me to get to. And it's uncovered. So just going to grab a cloth here. Here we go. The other thing that I always have handy are these great lint-free cloths. I'm going to turn this phone off so that nobody calls me in the middle of this. And you can use a number of different, brushes. I like these large flat brushes. This one has some paint sort of stuck right into it, but for the most part, it's still fairly supple. So I'm going to use it anyway. And again, if even if some of this blue was to transfer, it wouldn't matter because I'm going to cover it up anyway. I also have this other flat brush here, which I can use as well. And I tend to enjoy using gallery style canvases. They're deeper, and because I tend to wrap a lot of my art around the edge, so when it's hanging on the wall, it has a nice sort of finished look to it. Some artists prefer just to keep it just on the main part of the surface. I also lately have been getting into some of these thinner boards, which I also like. I find these really, really strong, even though they're thinner, and I've really been enjoying them. So I'm going to do the three of these sort of while I talk a little bit about rhyming, and why. So the whole topic came up to me the other day is because I was writing a song, and the last few songs that I've written, like, they've been rhyming, which is fine. But I thought, I'm not really I'm a rhymer in terms of poetry, and I'm a rhymer in terms of a whack of other things, but I don't really think in rhyme. I don't think most of us think in rhyme. So, so I started sort of doing a little bit of investigation, and it seems that most lyrics rhyme. Not everything rhymes, and but a lot of things, especially pop music, tends to rhyme. So I'm sort of going with the rhyming thing. But what I noticed was what I don't do is I sort of come up with a story first of what it is that I want to, what I want to what I want to sing about or have sung about. And I just kind of write the story out. And sometimes rhyme just automatically comes into it, and sometimes it doesn't. So what I found is that where it naturally seems to flow, I put it in there, and where it doesn't seem to flow or where it comes really contrived, I take it out. And what I've noticed is that in a lot of my songs, a lot being meaning like a dozen for somebody who's only just started really writing songs again in the past, I don't know, month, maybe 6 weeks. Um, but what I found has been that um, even if I start off with a rhyme scheme, most often I start off with a rhyme scheme of um, the first two lines rhyming and then the second two lines rhyming, and then depending on how long the stanza is or the chorus is, then I do the same thing with the next sets of lines. Oh, I already got that one done 4 times. Um, but what I find is that with the rhyming, is that it'll take its natural flow. So it might be an AABB rhyme to start with, and then it might automatically switch to an ABAB rhyme, sort of a thing, and I just sort of go with it. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it, but I just find if it just naturally works, if there's a cadence and the flow is there, then it won't really matter. So earlier this week, this is Thursday, I think. Yeah, this is Thursday. Earlier this week, I did a little bit of delving into, are there many pop songs that don't rhyme? And there are a good few out there. If you do a search, you'll find a whack of them. And some of them are purposely done because the artist didn't want to rhyme. And some of them are done just because it just naturally flowed better that way, which to me is in my humble opinion, is the best way to go with stuff. If it has a flow and it doesn't have to rhyme, then why make it rhyme for the sake of rhyming? And what I found is that a song, no matter whether the song rhymes or doesn't rhyme, it's telling a story. So if the story can just naturally progress and the rhyming works, then go for it. And if the flow of the story gets disrupted by some stupid rhyming scheme, then you're better off just not having it rhyme. That's the conclusion that I've come to. So, but I did do some little bit of research into um, the pluses and minuses of rhyming, and generally speaking, it comes down to the rhythm. Um, so here are some reasons for things to rhyme. Some sort of more traditional reasons why I guess artists have rhymed in the past. Because it's generally it's more catchy. It makes things easier to remember in terms of somebody's trying to remember the lyrics. Also, it makes things more pleasing to listen to. So, there's a sort of more of a natural cadence or rhythm to it. It can help with the structure and the organization of the lyrics. So, for example, if you're telling a story, then maybe the rhyming scheme just helps with the natural progression of the story. So I'm painting this in my hand off screen. My apologies. It can also make a sound because it's tending to run well. It can make a song sound more polished, more professional. Sometimes it can make things more easier to understand. Although I have to admit, in some of my songs, I probably used a more not difficult word, but like a bigger, more Slavic kind of a word than maybe I necessarily needed to for the sake of the rhyme. So we'll see how that plays out. I might go back and change that a little bit, but the rhyming can also have an impact, an emotional impact to the song, and that's definitely true. Like I've found that even myself. Sometimes the rhyme just really, the words that you choose with the rhyme actually have more of an impact than if you were just to say it in like a regular, storytelling kind of a voice. Um, and then of course, because of tradition, that kind of a thing, often, something that has a rhyme to it has more of a traditional sense or feel to it. That's certainly true, especially because a lot of songs, were derived from poetry, and poetry. I mean, traditional songs were derived from poetry, and poetry, of course, lends itself to rhyme. Um, and um, Sometimes the tone of the song that you want to sing, rhyme works really well for that. So that's another reason why you might want to use rhyme. If you want them to be more playful or lighthearted, then rhyme is often really a good thing to use. But also, if something's like super dramatic, sometimes rhyme works really well as well. So you just sort of have to, again, choose the diction that works for the, choose the words that work for the feeling that you're trying to get. I just realized the top of this didn't quite get done. With these boards, by the way, just as an aside, oops. With these boards, you coat them several times. So I'm coating them all lengthwise, and then I'll go back and I'll coat them all across. Then I'll coat them all. So they get 4 coats basically. Um, Also, rhyming helps the sense of unity or sense of the word for unity, like cohesion. It sort of it sort of pulls the song together a little bit more, and of course, obviously, it could make the song sound more lyrical or more poetic. So those are kind of a few reasons why, from what I've researched anyway, why people tend to like to use rhymes in their music. I'm sure that people who write songs all the time have their own reasons and perhaps stronger reasons why would they would use rhyme. But there are also reasons why you may choose not to use rhyme. Like sometimes you'll put a rhyme in there because because that's what you're doing. You're rhyming. Oops. Um, but really, the best word to use wouldn't be a rhyming word to use to further your story along. So then it makes it that sound um, like sort of unnatural or forced. And oftentimes you'll hear like sort of like a what I call a pseudo rhyme. So the ending of the word doesn't exactly rhyme, but it kind of has the same sort of a sound, and that's a way that a lot of artists get around sort of the rhyming. Um, so it sort of doesn't rhyme, but it rhymes at the same time. But it moves everything forward, which is and stays with the cadence and the tone and the timing of the piece, which is exactly what you want it to be. You want the one thing you want, no matter what you do with your song, is you want it to flow. So um, whatever it takes for your song to flow, I think is what most artists will choose to do. Um, but it can also make it sound like a cliche sometimes if you're using rhyme. It might be that um, the rhymes might that you're choosing might actually stop or jolt the expression of the lyrics. They might sort of screw with the flow. Sometimes they can make a song sound a song sound too familiar to another song because the either the lyrics chosen are similar or so I'm just gonna see which way I was going. I was going that way. Okay. Or they'll pick up the rhythm of the language, so it'll sound very similar, especially if they're, maybe doing it in the same key that another song was traditionally done in, or um, the more elements that you have that are the same to another song, the more often people will think of the other song, especially if it's a well-known or a classic song. Could be that using the rhyming scheme, it's overly simplistic. We tend to use a lot of rhyming words tend to be fairly simplistic words. Now, simplistic sometimes is better. I know even when I speak, I have people sometimes ask me what I mean when I use certain words. And I guess that's because I sort of did 32 English courses at university, and so I just naturally, between reading so much and writing so much, I just picked up diction that are words that not everybody necessarily uses. So I'm sort of cognizant of that, particularly when I write. And sometimes I will also choose words to use that, like a word can, um, like a single word sometimes can take the place of an entire phrase, and it rots me when I have the perfect word, but I can't use it because of the situation that I'm in or something, and I end up having to use like the whole phrase to get across the meaning that one word can do. So in a couple of songs that I've written, I've actually just used the word, and I'm not going for any great any great what do you call it? Commercial success. Like, none of my songs will ever be commercially produced, so I don't really care in that sense. I just sort of go with whatever word works. But if you want to do commercial success, you probably wouldn't follow that rule. So I don't know. You can't really see this very well, but this canvas now has two coats, so that in most places when I put this in the light, and I'm not sure how much you can see there, but I shouldn't see any empty spaces now. I do see this space here, though. Also, on the main part of the canvas, what I don't want are sort of globs of, even though I'll be covering it up, it doesn't really matter. But I still don't want the globs / drips / whatever. So I just tend to take the brush and just lightly go over the edges again. Yeah, what are some of the reasons why you can't, why it's not a good idea for you to necessarily use rhyme? Oh, it can sometimes have a like too much of a commercial poppy sound to it. So that's the reason why you may choose not to use rhyme. I'll do this one next. The one good thing too about this stuff is that it dries really quickly. Like this is, especially on the board, more so than the canvas, but especially on the board, this is already dry. So it's great to be able to go over it, multiple times. You might be wondering why I'm talking about about rhyme and writing and stuff while I'm doing this today. It's because the next live that I'm doing, we're actually going to write a song while I'm doing the live. So I'm challenging anybody who's watching this or watches this on the replay, particularly if it's before we do the next live, which is on Sunday. Today being Thursday. Yeah, I'm sort of putting out the challenge that, if you want to come to the live and tell me what it is that you'd like me to write a song about, a ditty about, yeah, bring it to me then, and I'll choose, if there's only one, then I'll write about that one. If there's a couple, then I'll just choose one of the topics, and maybe depending on how many there are, I'll write after the live about the other ones. Because I do love a good challenge. I don't generally, at least initially, cover the bottom of the boards just because it's easier to put them down. This stuff, it does dry, but it dries tacky. So I don't want to have something on the bottom of the board that's going to, um, pick up a whack of lint or although I do try to keep my drying space fairly clean, or dirt or that kind of a thing. So yeah. So anyway, so I'm gonna build the lyrics out of the song, and then if there's time, I will also do I will also try to attempt to do some music, or at least maybe get the chorus or the first verse done. You can kind of see that way how it is that I'm building music, and maybe I'll even show you part of the Dragonfly song that I'm working on right now, for example. And you can see, oops, you can see how that's coming out. Yeah, the Dragonfly song is just kind of it's not really about dragonflies. It's kind of about the symbolism behind dragonflies and how it affects our how they're symbolic to our lives. That's sort of the premise behind the Dragonfly song. It's not really about dragonflies per se. Um, so um, just a couple of last reasons, just to sort of finish off what I was talking about with the rhyming, is the fact that a rhyme can also make something seem less serious. So especially if we're talking about something that's like a heavy duty, say it this way, it's between it's a heavy duty topic, or a very somber topic. If you use rhyme, and sometimes it seems less so. Although, quite frankly, in my humble opinion, if you choose the right rhymes, it can actually make it sound a little bit more dramatic or more, um, I don't know, suit the mood a bit better. But the thing about rhyme is, depending what, well, for me, depending what the first line is, I might have the perfect first line, but if I can't find a good rhyme for the second line, it's going to sound contrived. So I either have to go back and choose something different for the first line, or sometimes what'll happen is the idea from the first line might end up going into a different verse, or sometimes it might change what the bridge is going to be, like change the sort of not the order of the story so much, but or I might go from two stanzas instead and put it into three stanzas. So there's all sorts of different ways you can sort of manipulate the rhyme. And then finally, sort of playing along that same sort of a line, same sort of idea is rhyming can make something sound sort of fake or less genuine or authentic or whatever. And so that's another reason why you may choose not to use rhyme. So, oops, just got a couple of blobs on here, so I just want to get rid of those. So I have coated these boards twice, and then what I'll do is I will coat them 4 times. I won't do this all online now, but I will coat them 4 times. I'm gonna let these 2 dry these 3 dry for about half an hour now in between the coats, just to let them really, particularly these ones, really soak into the wood a bit. Then I'll come back and do the last 2 coats, and then I'll leave them for 24 hours before I start to paint them. And that's just to make sure that everything's soaked in really well. And quite frankly, I coat things, and sometimes I will leave them for, days or weeks, so until I get to the point where I want to use them. But I do like to have some fresh canvases on hand so that when I do want to start working, I have something to work on. And I have a couple of ideas. A couple ideas, particularly for these wooden panels. So that's why I'm sort of doing a couple. I often will do like sort of a smaller test piece, and then do a bit larger piece. And I do have a couple of like really large wooden panels that I want to work on, but I know I need the space, both physically but also mentally, in order to do that. And I don't see that happening until at least next month. But I'm going to do a sort of a giant sort of collage sort of space. And this one, actually, tomorrow, I'm going to do this one's going to be an inspiration board, and that's what I'm going to mix on this one. And I'm almost going to use one of the canvases for the same sort of idea. So because on Saturday we have myself and Monica, who has the Metaverse community. We're doing inspiration boards for 2023, a workshop, and so we're looking forward to doing that. She's going to show you how to do it digitally, and I'm going to show you how to do it with the actual products in front of you. So, I like to be able to see something and when it's finished, hang it on the wall. And but there's also power in, say, maybe having it as your desktop screensaver, where you're seeing it every day. So that and you could do both. So that's kind of where we are now. So thank you for joining me. And so Saturday, if you'd like, you can join us at our inspiration board workshop. And then Sunday I go live again, and we'll actually write a song together. And I look forward to that. So I'll see you then. Take care. Bye.